Tonight, you close your eyes and hope for rest. But in a city built on noise, rest is never given, it is earned. For over 4 centuries, New Yorkers have fought for sleep, Dutch settlers barring doors against the wind, longshoremen collapsing on shared cots, tenement families listening through thin walls, commuters returning home to the hum of the subway beneath their feet. The city's sound has evolved, but the human need for quiet has not. Tonight, we walk through centuries of nights to understand how the day's rhythm shapes the rest you find when darkness falls. Before we settle in, if you enjoy these relaxing journeys into the past, like the video and subscribe for more quiet history evenings. If there's a part of today you want to let go, or a memory tonight brings back, share it below. Now let's get comfortable and ease into tonight's journey. You step into the cold air of New Amsterdam, where the night smells of wood smoke and salt. The wind carries the scent of the harbour, that mix of brine and fish and timber that clings to everything in this small settlement at the edge of the known world. Your breath makes small clouds in the darkening air. The day has been long, timber hauled from the forest's edge, each log heavy enough to make your shoulders ache. You spent the morning negotiating with the Lenape traders who came to the fort, their language still strange to your ears, their gestures careful and measured. You offered cloth and metal tools. They offered furs and knowledge of the land. The exchange felt fragile, built on trust that neither side fully possesses yet. You remember the afternoon's work, stacking firewood against the outer wall, checking the stores in the small warehouse where barrels of salted meat and grain sit in neat rows. You watched the harbour for sails that never came. The supply ship from Amsterdam is overdue by 3 weeks now. Every day without it means the settlement's future grows thinner, more uncertain. You counted the remaining provisions twice, trying to calculate how long they might last if winter comes early. The other settlers ask you questions you cannot answer. When will the ship arrive? What if it doesn't? You offer reassurance you do not fully feel. The settlement is small, rough, and built from scratch on a coastline that feels both promising and precarious. The Dutch West India Company planted this fort in 1624, and it remains a work in progress. The fort's walls are thick, but not thick enough to keep out the wind. The streets are dirt paths that turn to mud when it rains. There are no stones for paving, no established trades beyond survival. Every building represents weeks of labour. Every cleared field represents a battle against dense forest and rocky soil. You live in a place that exists because people willed it into being, not because it was easy or welcoming. As darkness settles, the wind picks up, moaning through narrow dirt streets and rattling the wooden shutters. You hear it moving through the settlement, like something alive, testing every structure, finding gaps in the walls. The temperature drops quickly once the sun disappears behind the western tree line. Your coat, heavy wool brought from the old country, feels inadequate against this new world cold. The wind carries sounds from the harbour, the creak of ropes, the knock of boats against the dock. Voices calling in Dutch and other languages you are still learning to distinguish. Swedish, English, and African tongues from the enslaved workers who arrived last month. The settlement is a mix of people drawn here by different dreams and different circumstances. Your hands are cold as you bar the heavy door, feeling the grain of timber cut from nearby forests. The wood is still relatively new, not yet worn smooth by years of use. You can feel the weight of it, solid and reassuring, as you slide the thick wooden beam into place. This nightly ritual matters. The door separates you from the wilderness, from the unknown threats that might move in darkness. Wild animals still roam close to the settlement's edge. Wolves have been heard. Bears leave tracks near the garbage pits. And there are human dangers too. The tensions with neighbouring groups. The occasional violence that erupts over trade disputes or misunderstandings. The barred door is a thin promise of safety, but it is all you have. The fire crackles low, casting shadows that dance across walls made of logs and clay. You fed it earlier with good dry wood, the kind that burns slowly and puts out steady heat. The flames are small now, just enough to keep the room's centre warm. The walls themselves provide little insulation. You can feel cold air seeping through gaps where the clay has cracked. In the morning, you'll need to repair those spots, pressing fresh clay into the spaces, trying to keep the winter out when it truly arrives. The firelight makes the room feel alive, shadows moving like silent companions. You listen to the harbour's distant sounds, oars in water, the creak of ships at anchor, voices in Dutch and other tongues you're still learning. Someone is singing, a low melody you recognise from taverns back home. The words are too faint to make out, but the tune carries across the cold air, a reminder that others are also settling in for the night, performing their own small rituals of survival. You hear a woman calling to her children, telling them to come inside. You hear the bark of a dog, the clatter of a pot being set down. These sounds form the evening's texture, the proof that this fragile settlement continues to exist. You lie down on a simple bed, wondering if the timber walls will hold until morning. The bed is nothing more than a wooden frame with rope supports and a thin mattress stuffed with straw and whatever soft materials could be gathered. It is not comfortable by any measure, but it is yours. You pull a rough wool blanket up to your chin, feeling the day's exhaustion settle into your bones. Your muscles ache from the labour. Your mind circles back to the missing ship, to the winter that approaches, to the 100 small worries that come with building a life in a place where nothing is guaranteed. Finding rest in the rhythm of survival itself becomes your meditation. You breathe slowly, matching your breath to the wind's movement, to the fire's crackle, to the harbour's distant sounds. Sleep will come because it must. Tomorrow will bring more timber to haul, more provisions to check, more days spent watching the horizon for sails. But tonight, you have this small space, this barred door, this low fire. You close your eyes and let the settlement's sounds fade into something like silence, something like peace. The harbour never truly stops, even in darkness. Its rhythm will carry you through the night and into whatever morning brings. By morning, you will need strength to face the docks again, but first you must navigate the chaos of the waterfront evening. You walk through the early 19th century port, where New York has become America's busiest gateway. The air hits you first, a thick mix of sea salt, wood smoke, and something sharper, the smell of fish left too long in the sun. Your body aches from the day, 12 hours hauling cargo. The weight of barrels and crates still pressing into your shoulders, even though you set down the last load an hour ago. Your hands are raw, rope burns crossing your palms in red lines that sting when you flex your fingers. The afternoon brought both wages and worry. The foreman handed you coins, enough for this week's rent in the boarding house, enough for meals that will keep you going. You counted them twice, feeling their weight in your pocket, doing the math in your head. But debt still looms. You borrowed money last month when work was slow, when the ship stopped coming during a storm that lasted 5 days. The man you owe is patient, but not forever. Tomorrow's work is never guaranteed. You might show up at dawn and find 100 other men already waiting, all hoping to be chosen for the day's labour. The waterfront is chaos even as evening falls. Taverns spill light and noise into the narrow streets, their doors propped open despite the cold. You hear laughter, arguments, the clink of glasses, singing in languages you recognise and some you do not. Irish voices mix with Italian, German and Dutch. The city is filling with people from everywhere, all of them chasing the same hope you are. That this port, this growing place, will offer something better than what they left behind. The smell of fish and sewage mixes with river fog that rolls in as the temperature drops. You remember a near accident today, a rope that snapped under too much weight. The crack of it breaking sounded like a gunshot. A fellow longshoreman, a man named Patrick, who shares your boarding house, was standing too close. The rope whipped past his head, missing him by inches. You saw his face go white. He did not speak for an hour after, just kept working with shaking hands. Accidents happen all the time on the docks. Men lose fingers, break bones, fall into the water, and drown because they never learned to swim. No one stops work when someone gets hurt. The docks never truly sleep. Ships arrive at all hours, pulled by the tide, guided by harbour pilots who know these waters in darkness. Bells ring across the water, signals passing between vessels and shore. You hear the creak of wood, the splash of oars, voices calling in a dozen languages. Lanterns bob on the decks of anchored ships, small points of yellow light reflecting off the black water. Even now, as full dark settles in, you can see men working, loading and unloading by lamplight. You carry the harbour's scent on your clothes. Salt and sweat have soaked into the fabric of your shirt. The tar used to seal ship seams has left dark smears on your sleeves. There is a metallic tang too, the smell of commerce itself, iron and copper, the coins that pass through thousands of hands. You cannot wash the smell out completely. The boarding house has a basin for washing, but the water is cold and shared, and by the time you get to it, the water is already grey with other men's dirt. The boarding house is crowded always. You climb the stairs, each step creaking under your weight, the sound joining the general noise of men coming home after long shifts. The room you share is filled with cots arranged in tight rows, barely an arm's width between them. Other men's breathing already fills the dim space. Some are asleep, exhausted from shifts that started before dawn. Others are sitting on their cots, eating bread and cheese, talking quietly, or just staring at nothing. The room smells of unwashed bodies, damp wool and tobacco smoke. A single lamp burns near the door, casting weak light that does not reach the far corners. You collapse onto your shared cot, not even bothering to remove your boots. The thin mattress offers little comfort, the ropes that support it digging into your back through the worn fabric. But you are so tired that it does not matter. The sounds of distant ships and the river's churn become the night's music. You hear water lapping against pier posts, the low horn of a vessel signalling its position in the fog, the rumble of cartwheels on cobblestones as late deliveries continue. Someone in the room is snoring, someone else is coughing, a wet sound that speaks of lungs damaged by cold and damp. Rest comes not from quiet, but from exhaustion so complete that even chaos becomes a lullaby. Your mind tries to hold on to worry. The debt, tomorrow's uncertain work, Patrick's close call with the rope. But your body overrides it all. Sleep pulls you down, not gently, but with force, dragging you into darkness because you have nothing left to resist with. The harbour's rhythm rocks you, the same rhythm that has rocked ships and sailors and dock workers for as long as this port has existed. You are one small part of a vast machine, a city that feeds on labour and trade and the constant movement of goods from ship to shore, to warehouse to market. The city is changing faster than anyone can track. More buildings rise each month. More ships arrive each week. The Erie Canal, completed just years ago, has turned New York into the gateway for an entire continent's trade. Goods flow through here that once would have taken months to reach the coast. And with the goods come more workers, more immigrants, more people packed into spaces that were never meant to hold so many. The boarding house was built for half the men who sleep here now. The docks were designed for a fraction of the cargo they handle. Everything is stretched thin, pushed to its limit, held together by the sheer will of people who have no choice but to make it work. Tomorrow, you will wake and do it all again if the foreman chooses you, if your body holds up, if luck stays on your side. But the city will not slow down to wait for any single person. It moves forward, relentless, and you move with it or get left behind. You climb the narrow stairs of a tenement building where the late 19th century city presses in from all sides. The steps are worn in the middle from thousands of feet, the wood soft and creaking under your weight. Your hand touches the banister and feels grime, years of it built up in a sticky layer. The stairwell is dark, lit only by a single gaslight on each landing, and you move slowly, your legs heavy after 10 hours standing at the factory machines. Your hands still ache from the repetitive motion of pulling levers and guiding fabric through rollers that never stopped moving. Your ears still ring from the industrial din, that constant roar of steam engines and metal gears and 100 machines running at once. Today brought small mercies. You bought a hot potato from the street vendor on the corner, still steaming when he handed it to you wrapped in newspaper. It burned your fingers but filled your stomach, the simple warmth of it spreading through your chest. No accidents happened on the line today. Last week, a woman caught her sleeve in a roller and screamed before the foreman could stop the machine. She lost 2 fingers. Today, everyone went home whole. The wages you collected at shift's end might stretch to the end of the week if you're careful. If you buy the cheapest bread, if you skip meals when you can. The tenement hallway carries the smell of coal smoke, cooking cabbage, and gaslight. The coal smoke is sharp and bitter, seeping from the stoves in each apartment. The cabbage smell mixes with onions and the cheap meat some families can afford. Under everything is the smell of bodies, of people who work hard and have no way to wash properly. You have stopped noticing most of it, but tonight, tired and hungry, you notice everything. Your room is tiny, shared with family. Your sister is already there, sitting on the one chair, mending a shirt by the light from the window. Your mother is at the stove, stirring something in a pot. Your younger brother sleeps on a mat in the corner, still in his factory clothes, too exhausted to eat. The room is barely 10 feet across, with one window that looks out onto an air shaft between buildings. The walls are thin, so thin you can hear your neighbours' conversations. their arguments, their children crying. The family on the left is fighting again, the man's voice rising and falling, the woman's voice sharp and defensive. On the right, a baby wails, that high, persistent sound of hunger or sickness. You remember the overcrowded streets you walked through tonight, pushcarts and voices filling every inch of sidewalk. The city is growing faster than its ability to house everyone with dignity. Buildings go up quickly, packed with as many people as they can hold, rooms divided and subdivided until families live in spaces meant for storage. You passed construction sites where new tenements are rising, already looking worn before they're finished. The gaslight flickers, casting a yellow glow that feels both comforting and insufficient. You lit it when you came in, turning the small valve, hearing the hiss of gas, striking a match and watching the flame catch and settle into a steady burn. The light reaches the centre of the room, but leaves the corners in shadow. It makes your mother's face look softer, hiding the lines that have deepened this year. It turns your sister's needle into a point of brightness, catching the light each time she pulls the thread through the fabric. Winter is coming, and you can already feel the cold creeping in through the gaps around the window. Through the wall you hear another family settling down, their routine a mirror of your own. Whispers, the creak of a bed, a cough that rattles in someone's chest. You hear a mother telling her child to sleep, her voice gentle despite the exhaustion in it. These sounds are so familiar, they become almost comforting, proof that you're not alone in this exhaustion, this struggle to make it through another day. You find a small silent space in your mind, grateful for the meal that fills your stomach. Your mother hands you a bowl of soup, thin but hot, and you eat it slowly, feeling the warmth spread through you. You are grateful for this room, small as it is. You are grateful for the gaslight, for your sister's steady presence, for your brother's sleeping form that means he at least has found rest. You listen to the collective fatigue of a city built on immigrant labour, the sound of millions settling down, barring doors, finding what comfort they can in spaces that barely contain them. The night becomes a shared condition, rest found not in isolation, but in the knowledge that millions are lying down at the same exhausted moment. You stretch out on your thin mattress, your body finally releasing the day's tension. Through the walls, through the floor, through the whole building, you feel the city exhaling. Everyone seeks the same small mercy of sleep before the factory whistle blows again at dawn. The city is changing, growing taller with each passing year, reaching upward in ways that will soon reshape even the sound of night itself. The elevated train announces itself before you see it, a rumble that builds from distant tracks into a roar that fills your small room. You lie here in the early 1930s where the city has grown upward and the night sounds have changed completely. Your room is on the third floor of a walk-up, the walls thin enough that you hear your neighbours on both sides, their movements and voices part of the evening's texture. The radiator hisses and clanks, putting out uneven heat that makes the room stuffy near the pipes and cold by the window. You settled your rent this morning, counting out bills that represented a week's wages, grateful to have them but aware of how little remained. The day brought contrasts that still sit heavy in your mind. You walked past gleaming skyscrapers this morning, those tall steel and glass towers that seem to pierce the clouds, their windows reflecting sunlight, in a way that makes the whole street shimmer. The city is building upward, reaching higher each year, and the buildings look like they belong in a future you can barely understand. But this afternoon, you stood in a bread line that stretched around the block, waiting with strangers for the charity meal that would be your dinner. The depression that began with the stock market crash in October 1929 has deepened into something that touches everyone now. Unemployment has climbed from under 2 million to numbers no one can quite believe. 16 million at its worst, they say. The line moves slowly, each person shuffling forward when space opened, nobody making eye contact, everybody carrying the same quiet shame of needing help. You remember the kindness of a man ahead of you in line, a fellow about your age wearing a coat that had seen better days. He turned around and started talking, telling a story about his landlord's cat that had gotten stuck in the building's elevator shaft. The way he told it, with his hands gesturing and his voice rising at the funny parts, made you both laugh despite empty pockets. Other people in line turned to listen, and for a few minutes the heaviness lifted. When you reached the front and got your bread and soup, he nodded at you. A small acknowledgement that you had shared something beyond just the weight. You carry that moment with you now, that brief lightness in a day otherwise weighed down by worry. The city feels both dazzling and desperate, modernity's promise visible in steel and glass but distant from your daily reality. You see cars on the streets now, more every month, their horns honking in traffic jams that never existed when everything moved by horse. You see electric signs blazing on Broadway, lighting up the night with colours and words that flash and change. You see women in short dresses and men in sharp suits, people who seem untouched by the economic collapse that has left you scrambling for work. The contrast is sharp and painful. The future is here, arriving in buildings and machines and lights, but you are standing still, or maybe sliding backward, unable to catch hold of the promise that everyone said this city offered. As you settle down, the elevated train passes overhead, its metal wheels grinding on metal tracks with a sound that shakes the window. The glass rattles in its frame, a rapid vibration that you feel through the bed, through the floor, through your entire body. The L runs on the street above yours, a massive structure of steel beams and wooden platforms that casts the street below in permanent shadow. The train's sound is not just loud, it is physical, a force that enters your space whether you want it or not. You hear the screech of brakes, the rumble of wheels, and the metallic clang as the train sways on the tracks. The whole building seems to shudder with each passing. The L runs all night, a mechanical heartbeat that marks time in a way church bells once did. Every few minutes, another train passes, heading downtown or uptown, carrying people who work night shifts or late shifts, or who are travelling for reasons you cannot guess. You used to try to sleep between trains, waiting for the quiet gaps, but you learned that the gaps are never long enough. Sleep has to happen despite the noise, not around it. You feel the vibration through the walls, a reminder that the city never stops, never rests, never acknowledges your need for quiet. The mechanical rhythm of progress does not care about human exhaustion. The trains will run because the city demands they run. After all, commerce and work and movement cannot pause for something as small as your need for sleep. The depression has made sleep lighter. Your mind will not fully let go, even when your body begs for it. You lie in the dark and count worries like other people count sheep. Tomorrow's meal. Will there be another breadline, another bit of charity to keep you going? Next week's rent. You paid this week, but what about the week after? The job you had last month is gone. The factory closed and the workers were let go with a week's notice. You have been looking every day, walking from business to business, asking if they need help, hearing no again and again, until the word loses meaning and just becomes another sound in the city's noise. The train's rhythm becomes familiar, and you find rest by remembering the stranger's kindness, that small human moment that cuts through the mechanical roar. You think about his laugh, the way it was genuine despite everything, the way he offered connection instead of turning inward. You think about the others in line who listened to his story, who smiled even though their stomachs were empty and their futures uncertain. That moment of shared humanity, brief as it was, carries more comfort than silence ever could. The night teaches you that comfort can come from unexpected sources, not silence, but the memory of shared humanity in hardship. You close your eyes, letting the train's next pass shake the window, accepting the noise as part of the city's nature. Rest will come, not perfectly, not deeply, but it will come because it must. The city will keep moving, and tomorrow you will move with it, carrying forward the small kindnesses that make survival possible. You walk into a 1950s apartment where the post-war city has settled into a different kind of energy. The key turns smoothly in the lock, the metal worn from years of use but still solid, still reliable. The late shift just ended, and you smell coffee and cigarettes on your clothes, the diner's grease still clinging to your uniform. The scent is so familiar now that you barely notice it until you step into your own space, where the air is cleaner, quieter. Your feet ache from 8 hours on tile floors, moving between tables, pouring coffee, carrying plates, wiping down counters. But the ache is manageable, expected, the price of steady work. Today was steady, predictable. The same customers came in at the same times, ordering the same meals they always order. The businessman who takes his coffee black and reads the paper without speaking. The older woman who orders toast and tea and leaves a dime tip folded neatly under her saucer. The truck drivers who come in after midnight run, loud and hungry, ordering eggs and hash browns and joking with you in ways that feel friendly, not threatening. The rhythm of work feels secure in a way your parents never knew. Your father bounced from job to job during the Depression, never certain where next week's money would come from. Your mother took in laundry and mending, her hands always red and raw. But you have a steady paycheck. The diner is always busy. People always need to eat. The security is not perfect, but it is more than the generation before you had. The city outside is humming, not quiet, but knowable. You hear traffic on the street below. Cars passing in both directions, their engines a steady drone that rises and falls, but never stops. You hear voices from the sidewalk, people walking home from late shifts or heading out to early ones. You hear the distant rumble of industry, factories that run all night, producing goods that fill stores and homes across the country. The sounds form a pattern you recognize, a rhythm that has become almost comforting. You hear a distant police siren, its wail cutting through the night. The sound starts far away, grows louder as the car speeds closer, then fades again as it moves past your neighbourhood toward whatever emergency called it. You used to tense at the sound, wondering if trouble was coming to your block, your building, your door. But now you recognize it as part of the city's functioning, the systems that keep order, that respond to need. The siren is proof that someone is watching, which helps move through the streets, even at this hour. The subway rumbles beneath your feet, a reminder that even now the city is moving, working, alive. You feel the vibration through the floor, a gentle shake that lasts a few seconds and then fades. The subway runs all night now. Trains carrying workers to and from shifts that keep the city running around the clock. You rode it home tonight, standing in a car with a dozen other tired people, all of you swaying together as the train moved through tunnels, all of you getting off at different stops, heading to different homes but sharing the same quiet exhaustion. The subway's reliable. It shows up. It takes you where you need to go. That reliability matters more than you can easily express. You lock the door, a simple gesture that connects you to centuries of New Yorkers performing the same ritual. Your hand moves automatically, turning the deadbolt, checking the handle to make sure it catches. The door is solid, the lock is strong, and you're safe inside. The act of locking the door marks the transition from public to private, from work to rest, from the city's demands to your own small space. You are home. The world is outside. You have earned this boundary. The apartment is small, but yours. One room that serves as a bedroom, a living room, and a kitchen, with a bathroom down the hall that you share with two other tenants. The furniture is simple, most of it bought second-hand, but it is clean and functional. The bed is made, the dishes are washed, the floor is swept. You keep the space neat because disorder feels like giving up, and you have not given up. This space is earned through the steady grind of showing up, day after day, in a city that rewards endurance. You did not inherit wealth or advantage. You have only your ability to work, to keep going, to show up for every shift, and do the job well enough that they ask you back. You take off your uniform, hanging it on the hook behind the door, where it will air out before tomorrow's shift. You wash your face and hands in the small sink, the cold water bracing and clean. You feel the day's tension begin to release from your shoulders, your neck, your jaw. The motions are routine, comforting in their sameness. Every night, the same steps. Every night, the same small rituals mark the end of work and the beginning of rest. You lie down and the city's hum settles around you like something known. The traffic outside continues. The subway rumbles again beneath your building. Voices call to each other in the street. A dog barks, a door slams, the radiator hisses. The sounds form a kind of music, familiar and constant. You do not need silence to rest. You need to know that the sounds you hear are normal, expected, part of the pattern that defines your life. Rest comes from recognizing that the noise is the sound of a city that endures, and so do you. You close your eyes, feeling your breathing slow, your body sinking into the mattress. Tomorrow will bring another shift, another round of the same customers, and the same orders, and the same tired walk home. But tonight you have this: the locked door, the small clean room, the steady hum of a city that keeps going, just like you do. And in this moment, lying here with the city's rhythm moving through the walls and floor, you begin to sense something larger, that this nightly ritual, this act of finding rest amid the noise, reaches back further than you know. You stand at the threshold of understanding, where 4 centuries of nights, begin to converge. The sounds have changed across generations. Wind through timber walls in New Amsterdam, harbour bells ringing across dark water, tenement voices bleeding through thin plaster, elevated trains shaking windows, subway rumbles felt through floorboards. But the gesture at day's end remains the same. Each person, in their own time, performed a ritual of closure. Each person marked the boundary between the world's demands and their own small claim to rest. The Dutch settler barred a wooden door against the wilderness night, his hands cold from the day's labour, his mind circling worries about ships that had not arrived. The longshoreman pulled a thin blanket over tired shoulders, still smelling the harbour on his clothes, his body aching from 12 hours of lifting cargo that was never quite light enough. The factory worker listened through walls so thin that neighbours' lives became their own, finding comfort not in privacy, but in the knowledge that exhaustion was shared. The Depression-era tenant felt the window shake as the elevated train passed overhead, counting worries instead of sheep, remembering a stranger's kindness in the breadline as the only softness in a hard day. What connects these moments is not the noise itself, but the human need to mark the end of the day, to create a boundary between work and rest. The act of lying down is not just physical, it is a declaration. It says that today is finished, that tomorrow can wait, that the body's need for rest outweighs every other demand. The boundary might be as solid as a barred door or as fragile as a closed eye, but it exists because people insist it must. Without this boundary, there is no separation between labour and life, no moment when you stop being a worker and become simply yourself. You realise that every generation fought the same battle, not for silence, which never existed, but for a rhythm they could trust. The Dutch settler learned to trust the wind's patterns, knowing which sounds meant danger and which meant only weather. The longshoreman learned to trust the harbour's constant motion, the bells and horns becoming a language he understood without thinking. The factory worker learned to trust the thin walls, finding security in the proximity of others rather than isolation. The Depression-era tenant learned to trust the elevated train schedule, its mechanical regularity becoming more reliable than human promises. Each generation adapted to their era's noise by making it familiar, by finding patterns in what first seemed like chaos. The city has always been loud, but people have always found ways to make the noise familiar, to turn chaos into a pattern they recognise. Familiarity is the key. A sound you understand is not the same as a sound you fear. The first night in a new place, every creak and distant voice feels threatening, but after weeks and months, those same sounds become comforting. You know what they mean. You know they signal normal life continuing around you. The noise becomes proof that the city is functioning, that systems are operating, that you are not alone in the dark. What once disturbed your sleep becomes what helps you sleep. The act of lying down becomes a universal ritual, whether on a rough cot in a crowded boarding house, a shared bed in a tenement room, or a modern mattress in a small apartment. The materials change, but the meaning stays constant. To lie down is to acknowledge exhaustion. To lie down is to trust that the world will continue without your vigilance for a few hours. To lie down is to participate in the most basic human need, one that cannot be denied or postponed forever. No matter how loud the city, how pressing the worries, how uncertain the future. The door you lock tonight echoes the door barred over 4 centuries ago. different materials, same human hope for safety and rest. The Dutch settler used a wooden beam across rough-hewn timber. You use a metal deadbolt in a steel frame. But the action carries the same meaning. You are creating safety. You are marking territory. You are saying that this space, however small, belongs to you for the night. The gesture connects you across time to every person who has ever lived in this city and sought the same simple thing. A place to rest that feels secure enough to let consciousness slip away. The hope does not change. The need does not change. The Dutch settler hoped his walls would hold until morning. The longshoreman hoped his body would recover enough to work again tomorrow. The factory worker hoped the wages would stretch far enough. The Depression-era tenant hoped for a meal, for work, for a future less harsh. You hope for rest deep enough to face whatever tomorrow brings. The specifics of hope shift with each era's challenges, but the core remains, the hope that you will wake, that you will continue, that survival is possible for one more day. Across centuries, the night becomes a shared space where survival means finding comfort, not in silence, but in the familiar rhythm of endurance. Silence was never the goal because silence was never possible. The city was loud in 1624, and it is loud now. The sounds have changed, but the volume has not. What changes is your relationship to the noise. You learn to hear it differently. You learn to find comfort in the predictable patterns, in the sounds that mean life continues, in the rhythm that is held steady across generations. The night is loud, but it is knowable. The noise is constant, but it is familiar. And in that familiarity, you find what every New Yorker across 4 centuries has found. Not perfect peace, but enough peace to close your eyes and trust that morning will come. The sounds themselves carry meaning, if you know how to listen. You listen to the city tonight and hear not just noise, but the accumulated sound of generations adapting. The traffic hum, the distant siren, the subway's rumble beneath your feet. These sounds carry history in them, layer upon layer of people who learn to sleep despite the city's voice. For over a century, people have fought against the noise. In the early 1900s, a woman named Julia Barnett Rice stood on her riverfront property and counted the unnecessary horn blasts from tugboats and steamers. She heard them day and night, pointless signals that woke her children and shattered any hope of quiet. She organised, she complained, she pushed for laws to limit the noise. The city listened somewhat. Ordinances were written, rules were made, but the complaints never stopped. Each generation writes the same letters, makes the same phone calls, and demands the same relief from the constant sound. The city has tried to mute itself in small ways. The subways run quieter now than they did 50 years ago, rubber wheels replacing some of the old metal, sound-dampening materials lining tunnel walls. Construction happens during set hours, regulated by permits and fines. Traffic laws attempt to control horn use, though you hear them anyway, impatient drivers announcing their frustration to everyone within 3 blocks. Modern technology brings noise cameras, devices that automatically ticket vehicles whose engines or exhausts exceed acceptable decibel levels. The efforts are real, the intentions genuine, yet the fundamental hum continues, steady and unbroken, the sound of 8 million people living their lives in close quarters. You realise that the noise is not the enemy. The noise is the sound of a city working, surviving, evolving. Every sound tells you something about what keeps this place alive. The traffic means people are moving, going to jobs, visiting family, and delivering goods that stock the stores where you buy food. The construction noise means the city is repairing itself, improving, and building new spaces for the people who keep arriving. The sirens mean help is moving towards someone who needs it. The subway rumble means the system that connects everything is functioning. Even the sounds that feel intrusive or unnecessary are part of a larger pattern of survival and growth. The Dutch heard wind and water, the elemental sounds of a settlement where nature still dominated. The wind told them about the weather coming, about storms that might delay ships. The longshoreman heard commerce, the sounds of a port that never stopped. Bells, horns, voices in many languages, all of it meant work, meant wages. The factory workers heard industry, the mechanical roar of progress. The machines meant jobs, meant the city was producing and growing. You hear traffic and sirens and distant music, the sounds of services, of a city that runs on information and movement. Your era's noise is different in character, but identical in function. It tells the story of what keeps the city alive right now. The night reveals that quiet was never the goal. Familiarity was the goal. The ability to recognize the sounds and know what they mean. You do not need silence to rest. You need to understand the noise, to categorize it, to know which sounds signal danger and which signal normal life continuing around you. The Dutch settler learned which wind sounds meant a storm coming and which meant just weather passing through. The longshoreman learned which harbour bells meant incoming ships and which meant shift changes. The factory worker learned which machine sounds meant normal operation and which meant something was breaking. You learn which sirens are close enough to matter and which are just part of the city's background. The city's hum becomes a kind of historical record, each era's noise a chapter in the ongoing story of how people make a life in a place that never stops. If you could hear all 4 centuries at once, you would hear the evolution of sound itself, from natural elements to human-powered commerce, to mechanical industry, to electronic services. You would hear the story of how humans learned to live in increasing density, how they adapted to each new level of noise, how they found ways to sleep despite everything. The sounds layer over each other, generation after generation, creating a kind of audio archaeology where each level tells you what mattered in that time. You find comfort not in silence, but in understanding that the noise is the sound of survival, yours and everyone who came before. The city will not be quiet tonight. It will not be quiet tomorrow night. It has never been quiet, and it never will be. But you do not need quiet. You need the knowledge that the sounds you hear are normal, expected, part of the pattern that has held for over 400 years. The noise connects you to every person who has ever tried to sleep in this city. They heard their era's version of the same hum. They found rest anyway. The sounds outside your window right now carry the same message they carried in 1624, in 1850, in 1932, in 1955. The message is simple. The city continues. People are working, moving, living, surviving. The noise is proof that the system functions, that tomorrow will come, that you are part of something larger than yourself. And just as those who came before you brought their days into their nights, carrying the weight of labour and worry, and small victories into the hours of rest, you too carry today with you as you prepare to let go. You close your eyes and feel the weight of today settling into your body. The physical sensation is immediate. Your shoulders release tension they have been holding since morning. Your jaw unclenches, your breathing slows. But the day does not leave you just because you lie down. It follows you into this quiet moment, pressing into your thoughts, replaying moments you cannot quite let go of yet. The Dutch settler carried worries about the next ship, calculating in his mind how many more weeks the settlement could survive on dwindling supplies, wondering if the indigenous neighbours would remain friendly or if tensions would break into something worse. The longshoreman carried the harbour's ache, his muscles remembering every barrel lifted, every near miss with snapping ropes, his mind circling the debt he still owed, and the foreman's face that might not choose him tomorrow. The factory worker carried the machine's rhythm, that constant industrial pulse still echoing in their bones, hours after the shift ended. The Depression-era tenant carried economic fear, the kind that sits in your stomach like a stone, the awareness that next week's rent is uncertain, that the breadline might be longer tomorrow, that kindness from strangers is sometimes all that stands between you and complete despair. You carry your own day, the meetings that stretch longer than scheduled, voices talking over each other, decisions that felt important but somehow remained unclear, the commute that tested your patience, trains delayed, crowds pressing too close, the small victories that made you smile, a task completed ahead of deadline, a colleague's unexpected compliment, a moment of connection that felt genuine, the lingering anxieties that will not quite release their grip, the email you need to send but have been avoiding, the conversation that went wrong and keeps replaying in your mind, the worry about money or health or family that sits just beneath everything else. All of it shapes how you lie down, how your body settles, how quickly or slowly your mind allows rest to come. The night is never separate from the day. The night is where the day's emotions, memories, and physical exhaustion finally find expression. During daylight hours, you push through, you function, you perform the role required of you, worker, parent, friend, citizen. You hold things together because stopping is not an option. But when you lie down and the immediate demands cease, everything you held at bay comes forward. The frustration you swallowed during the meeting surfaces as tension in your neck. The joy you felt but did not fully acknowledge blooms into a smile in the dark. The exhaustion you ignored while standing on the train finally pulls at your limbs with honest weight. You remember moments from today, a stranger's smile on the street, brief and unexpected, a person who made eye contact and offered warmth when they could have just looked past you, a frustration that still burns, a situation where you were right but could not make others see it, where you had to accept a decision you disagreed with because arguing further would have cost more than it was worth, a task completed, a small thing checked off your list that gives you a moment of satisfaction, a problem unsolved, something that sits waiting for tomorrow's attention, already claiming a small portion of your mind's energy. The city outside continues its work. You hear it through the walls, through the window, through the floor. The traffic flows, the subway runs, the sirens wail. People are working night shifts, keeping systems running that you depend on, but rarely think about. Someone is delivering packages. Someone is cleaning office buildings. Someone is caring for patients in hospitals. Someone is driving a taxi. The city never stops, but you have reached the boundary where your work must pause. You cannot do more today. Your body has limits. Your mind has limits. The act of lying down becomes an acknowledgement that you are human, not a machine. Machines can run continuously if properly maintained. Machines do not need rest, only fuel and repair. But you need sleep. You need the hours when consciousness releases its grip and the body performs its maintenance work without your direction. You need the reset that only sleep provides. Rest is not weakness. Rest is the condition that makes tomorrow possible. Without it, you break down, slowly at first and then catastrophically. The night becomes the place where the day's rhythm transforms into memory. The immediate present fades into the recent past. What felt urgent an hour ago becomes less so. What felt impossible to solve becomes something you can carry until tomorrow. The body releases what it carried, muscle by muscle, breath by breath. Your shoulders drop another inch, your hands unclench, your breathing deepens. Tomorrow begins to take shape in the space between waking and sleeping. Your mind already planning, already anticipating, already preparing for what comes next, even as it tries to let go of what just was. Every New Yorker across 4 centuries brought their day into their night. The Dutch settler, the longshoreman, the factory worker, the Depression-era tenant, they all lay down carrying the day's weight. They all found rest not by forgetting, but by letting the day settle into something manageable, something they could carry through sleep and into morning. The city has always demanded everything. The night has always offered this small mercy, the chance to set it down, just for a few hours, to remember that beneath all the demands and systems and endless motion, you remain something the city can never fully claim. You lie in a city that runs like a machine, but you remain stubbornly, beautifully human. The mattress beneath you holds your weight, the pillow cradles your head, and your body begins its nightly ritual of releasing the day's tension. New York has always been a machine, a system designed with purpose and precision. The Dutch understood this when they established their trading post at the island's southern tip in 1624. They were not building a home in the sentimental sense. They were building an engine for commerce, a place where furs and goods could flow between the new world and the old country, generating profit with each transaction. The 19th century built a port that handled more cargo than any other in America. Ships arrived daily, sometimes hourly, their holds full of cotton, tobacco, manufactured goods, and immigrants. The docks became a system of movement, goods flowing from ship to warehouse to market with mechanical efficiency. Workers were parts in this machine, their bodies the engines that moved cargo when steam power was not enough. The industrial age built factories that ran day and night, their production lines designed to maximize output while minimizing cost. Workers became extensions of the machines they operated, their movements timed and measured, their value calculated in units produced per hour. The modern era built a 24-hour metropolis where services never cease. Restaurants stay open through the night. Subway trains run on continuous schedules. Delivery systems operate around the clock. The internet means work never truly stops. Emails arriving at midnight and messages demanding responses regardless of the hour. The city has evolved into a system so complex and interconnected that stopping any one part threatens the whole. The machine has grown sophisticated, but its core purpose remains unchanged: to produce, grow, and never stop. The machine demands constant motion. The trading post needed ships arriving on schedule, The port needed cargo moving through without delay. The factories needed workers to show up for every shift. The modern city needs you responding, producing, and participating in the endless cycle of commerce and communication. The system is not designed around human limits. It is designed around efficiency, around the assumption that rest is a necessary evil rather than a fundamental need. But the human body demands rest. Your muscles can only work so many hours before they begin to fail. Your mind can only focus so long before it starts making mistakes. Your emotional capacity can only stretch so far before something breaks. This tension has defined New York nights for over 4 centuries. The city asks for more than bodies can give. People push themselves to meet the city's demands, working longer hours, sleeping less, sacrificing rest for wages or ambition or simple survival. But eventually, every person reaches the same wall. The body insists. Rest is not optional. You feel the pull between the city's energy and your own exhaustion, the same pull felt by every generation. The Dutch settler wanted to keep working, to clear more land, to prepare more thoroughly for winter, but darkness and cold made further labour impossible. The longshoreman wanted to take another shift to earn more coins, but his body was spent. The factory worker wanted to keep going, to make more money through overtime, but the machines stopped and exhaustion pulled them home. The Depression-era tenant lay awake wanting to solve tomorrow's problems tonight, but consciousness eventually surrendered to fatigue. You feel that same pull now, the awareness that the city continues without you, that work remains undone, but that you cannot continue without pause. The city's lights never fully dim. From your window, you see the glow of street lights, apartment windows, and storefronts that stay illuminated through the night. The lights create a false day, an artificial brightness that suggests sleep is optional. The engines are never fully quiet. You hear traffic, construction that happens overnight to avoid disrupting daytime commerce, the subway's constant movement and aircraft passing overhead. The city's ambition never fully satisfies itself. There is always more to build, more to improve, more to grow into. Yet every night, millions of people perform the same act of resistance. They lie down, they close their eyes, they insist on rest despite the city's demands, despite unfinished work, and despite the machine's preference for continuous operation. This act is small and quiet, performed in private spaces across the city, but it is profound. To sleep is to declare that you are not merely a component in the machine. To rest is to assert that human needs matter more than productivity. To close your eyes is to say that you will not be consumed completely, that some part of you remains separate from the system. The night becomes a quiet rebellion, a reminder that no matter how efficient the machine, the human need for rest remains constant and non-negotiable. The city has tried for over 4 centuries to minimize this need, to make people sleep less, to create systems that run regardless of human limitations. But the biology does not change. You need 7, 8, or 9 hours of unconsciousness. Your brain needs time to process the day's information, to store memories, and to clear waste that builds up during waking hours. Your muscles need time to repair damage from the day's work. Your emotional systems need time to reset. No amount of coffee or artificial light or sheer willpower can eliminate these needs permanently. The city is a machine, designed and built to function with mechanical precision. but you are human and that humanity carries needs that no system can override. Your need for sleep, for quiet, for the ritual of closing the door and marking the boundary between work and rest. These needs have endured across centuries. They endured when the city was a small trading post, and they endure now when it is a global metropolis. The machine changes, grows more complex, and demands more from each generation. But the human need for rest stays constant, a biological truth that resists every attempt to engineer it away. And tonight, as you surrender to that need, you join something larger than yourself. You drift towards sleep and realize you're part of an unbroken chain. Tonight, across New York, millions lie down just as you do. In apartments with radiators hissing, in houses with quiet hallways, in shelters where strangers sleep in rows, in hotels where travellers close their eyes far from home. Each person carries their own day into their own night. Each person brings worries and small joys, exhaustion and hope, the weight of what happened and the uncertainty of what comes next. The city holds all of these individual nights in one vast breathing darkness. 400 years ago, a few hundred settlers did the same. They lay down in wooden structures that smelled of fresh timber and wood smoke, their bodies tired from building a life where nothing existed before. 200 years ago, tens of thousands performed this ritual, collapsing onto cots in boarding houses, their muscles aching from dock work. 100 years ago, millions settled into tenement rooms and modest apartments, listening through thin walls to neighbours performing the same evening routines, finding comfort in the proximity of others, struggling through the same challenges. The city has changed in every visible way. The wooden walls became brick, then steel and glass towers reaching toward the sky. The dirt paths became cobblestone streets, then paved roads carrying cars instead of horses. The small harbour became a massive port system. The gas lamps became electric lights that never fully dimmed. The manual labour became mechanised industry, then service work, then digital commerce that happens in spaces you cannot see or touch. Everything that makes the city visible has transformed completely. Yet this moment, the moment when you lie down and close your eyes, remains the same. You are connected to every person who has ever barred a door in this city. The Dutch settler is sliding a wooden beam across rough timber. The longshoreman is checking the lock on a boarding house door. The factory worker was touching the doorknob one last time before settling in for the night. The Depression-era tenant turning the lock and feeling the small relief that comes from having a door to lock at all. Each gesture connects across time, the same human need for a space that belongs to you, however temporarily. You're connected to every person who pulled a blanket close, whether rough wool that scratched but provided warmth, thin cotton that was never quite enough, or heavy quilts passed down through generations. The material changes, but the action stays constant. You pull the blanket up because you're vulnerable when you sleep. After all, covering yourself is an instinct older than cities because the weight of it provides comfort that goes beyond temperature. You are connected to every person who listened to the night sounds and wondered about tomorrow. The settler wondered if the missing ship would arrive, if the winter would be survivable, and if the fragile peace with neighbours would hold. The longshoreman wondered if the foreman would choose him tomorrow, if his body would hold up for another shift. The factory worker wondered if the wages would stretch far enough, if their children would have better lives. The Depression-era tenant, wondering where the next meal would come from, if work would return. You wonder your own version of these questions. The details change, but the wondering remains constant. The noise outside is different. You do not hear wind through timber or harbour bells, or the screech of elevated trains. You hear traffic and sirens and the subway's distant rumble. You hear sounds the earlier generations could not have imagined. Aircraft passing overhead, digital alerts from devices, the hum of electronics that never fully power down. But the need for rest is identical. Your biology has not changed. You still need 7 or 8 hours of unconsciousness. Your brain still needs time to process and restore. Your muscles still need recovery. No amount of technology or progress has eliminated this fundamental requirement. The night becomes a shared space, a commons where everyone meets regardless of circumstance. The wealthy person in their penthouse apartment and the person in the shelter both close their eyes and surrender consciousness. The past and present meet here too. The Dutch settler and you are doing the same thing, separated by 4 centuries, but united in this basic human vulnerability. Sleep is the great equalizer. It does not care about your status or your struggles. It does not care about the era you live in or the progress humanity has made. It demands the same thing from everyone: that you stop, that you lie down, that you let go of control and trust your body to do its work. When you sleep, you are defenseless. You cannot protect yourself. You cannot respond to threats. You cannot work or produce or contribute to the machine that runs the city. Sleep requires trust. Trust that your locked door will hold, that the morning will come, that you will wake and have another chance. This trust is the same trust the settler felt, the longshoreman felt, the factory worker felt. It connects you to them more deeply than any historical fact or date or name. The comfort comes not from silence or isolation. The city has never been silent. You have never been truly isolated. The comfort comes from the knowledge that you are part of a long, tireless routine of survival. Millions before you lay down in this city and found rest despite noise, despite worry, despite exhaustion. Millions around you are lying down right now. Millions after you will do the same. The routine continues unbroken across centuries and through every change the city has undergone. In that continuity, in that shared experience of seeking rest at the end of a long day, there is profound peace. You are never alone in this act, never the first or the last to close your eyes and hope for rest in a city that never stops. Tonight, you close your eyes and join the simple, universal act of seeking rest. The city's hum continues. It always has. It always will. But you have found your place in it, just as generations before you did. The noise that once felt like chaos now feels like home. The sounds that kept others awake become the sounds that tell you everything is as it should be. You lie down, performing the same gesture the Dutch settler performed, the same gesture the longshoreman performed, the same gesture millions perform tonight across this city. If this journey brought you comfort, subscribe and drift with us into more true stories of how people found rest in the long arc of history.